So mental health is not easy to talk about. I have shared my experience and struggles with mental illness online for a few years now, and still every single time I make a post regarding it in some way, I'm really scared. Even though it is scary, I feel like it is important to talk about, especially at this time of year. I know the holidays are great for some people, but for a lot of people, including me, the holidays naturally tend to be a harder time on people with mental illness. So I decided to open up my Instagram inbox for people to kind of start a conversation about mental health. I gave you guys the opportunity to ask me whatever you wanted to know about my story, as well as sharing your personal struggles or asking advice in some sort of way. Obviously, I'm not a mental health professional, but I do have a little more experience than I wish I had in regards to mental health or mental illness in any way. So I also threw out on Instagram what I have been diagnosed with and what I struggle with. If you aren't on my Instagram, I have been diagnosed and struggle with depression, social and generalized anxiety, PTSD, and self-harm. So everyone who asked me a question is kind of using that as a reference in mind. So we're just gonna get started. This is kind of scary. Okay. How did you tell your parents you were depressed? I never really had a conversation with them where I sat them down and I told them that I thought I was depressed or anything. To be honest, there is such a difference in who I am when I'm depressed versus who I am when I'm not depressed, that it's kind of like night and day. So I feel like they probably knew that I was depressed before I even came to the conclusion that I was depressed. So it was never a conversation where I had to sit down and tell them like that I thought I needed help or like I thought something was wrong, because it was kind of like really apparent in just how I was living my life. What is something you do to cope with PTSD flashbacks? I feel like the answer I'm going to give isn't realistically how I handle the situation, because when you're having a flashback of a traumatizing event, it's really hard to step outside of that and think clearly because it's all consuming. So normally what I try to do, and what I have done successfully a couple times, is just reminding myself that what I'm thinking of is past tense and that it's already happened and it's just a memory now. And realistically speaking, the traumatizing event that I get so caught up in most likely isn't gonna happen to me ever again. So just reminding myself that like the traumatizing event that I'm caught up in or whatever, I survived, it's in the past tense, it's not gonna happen again, kind of gives me like a sense of regained strength, because you know it's so easy to think of the traumatizing event or whatever and feel like you're constantly lost in it and will never be able to move on with your life. But like in reality, you have, even though it doesn't always feel like that, it's in the past and you are moving your life forward. So just reminding myself that it is a memory, I survived it, I'm a lot stronger than I think I am, kind of helps bring me back to reality and makes me feel like I regained some strength in that situation. Although that isn't what I do in every situation I have with PTSD. That's something that I have been able to do a couple times that seemed to help, so. I struggle with depression and self-harm as well. What is your best advice on handling it? I'm gonna give a couple things here. First and foremost, I say go to therapy, because therapy is beneficial for everyone, even people who seem perfectly normal. Everyone can benefit from it. So definitely go to therapy. I would say, although this isn't immediately gonna cure you of any of your struggles or whatever, you have to make the decision that you want to get better. Because I know for me, when I was diagnosed with depression, it was severe depression. I had like full plans to take my life. I was not going to be around for much longer. And when I was diagnosed, obviously like the thought of medication was like thrown around a lot, and a lot of people wanted me to get on it. And I was heavily against medication. And now looking back on my life, I can kind of pinpoint that the reason I was against medication was because I didn't think I wanted to get better. Like honestly, I felt so comfortable. Like sadness kind of became like everything I ever knew, And so the thought of stepping outside of that and experiencing something different than how I had been living for so long and what I had been getting comfortable with was really, really, really scary. And the same thing with self-harm. It is an addiction, so you aren't going to be able to overcome an addiction if you don't want to. Like, that's just what it comes down to. It's hard enough to overcome it when you do want to go get better. So when you haven't made that decision in your head of like, I'm going to get better, like I want to get better, it is a game changer. Like I said, as soon as you make the decision of like, I want to get better, your depression isn't going to be cured. You're never going to struggle with self-harm again or whatever. It's not like that, but I think that is a very, very important and key first step to overcoming it. As far as the self-harming goes, I think after you make the decision that you want to get better and that this is something that you don't want to do anymore, like authentically deep down you don't want to do anymore. Distraction is like a huge thing that I use in my life when I feel an urge to self-harm. If you're anything like me, when you get the urge, it's kind of like all you can think about. So instead of like laying in bed and kind of like wallowing in it like I used to do in the past, which obviously doesn't help, I can now kind of redirect my brain to distractions, whether it be, you know, watching a movie or a TV show or reading a book or listening to music. All of those are great ways to kind of step into someone else's perspective in life, and it gives your brain something solely to focus on, especially if you're reading and you're concentrating on like words. That is like the perfect way to reroute your brain, as well as like painting your nails. That's something I do. Whenever my nails are painted, guys, I am not in a good place mentally. So just a tip for you guys. But yeah, painting my nails is something that I do. Taking a shower, as long as you don't have sharp objects in the shower with you, go ahead and take them out. Sometimes I even will leave the house. Like, I know that if I stay where I'm at, I'm going to do something stupid. I will just completely remove myself from the situation and just like go for a drive, whether I end up at Starbucks or a park or wherever. It just completely removes me from the situation and that seems to really be helpful. So just making the decision that you don't want to live like this anymore and being determined to getting better, and distraction is probably the key, I think, to kind of getting past self-harm. Obviously it's an addiction. It is something that some people struggle with for a lifetime, but it is completely doable to overcome. You mentioned having a service animal for your illnesses. Is that still a thing? So, funny story for those of you who don't know what is being talked about right now. A few years ago I got a German Shepherd. Her name is Stella. I love her very much. And I got her with the mindset of training her to be a service dog for my anxiety and my PTSD. The thought process was to train her and be able to take her to school with me, because schooling was the situation where I noticed that I had the most panic attacks in, and that led me to miss a lot of class, fall behind on a lot of schoolwork, and just, I ended up graduating late because of it. It was just a lot. So I got my dog, I got her trained as a service animal up until the point of getting her certified. And I kind of realized after bringing her to school with me and her sitting in class with me for a couple of times, it kind of ended up giving me more anxiety, because when you have a service animal with you, it is an immediate spotlight. Like, when you walk into a room, everyone is looking at you, and having social anxiety with a service animal is also hard because discrimination is a thing. People will tell you that you can't come into certain places with a dog even though it's a service animal, and a lot of people will question you. There's the thought process that only veterans of war have service animals for PTSD, so obviously I don't look like I've been in the military and have been to war, so there's a lot of questioning of like if you actually need a service animal. And then also a lot of people will come up and start petting your service animal, which is a huge no-no. It's not supposed to happen. And just me having the social anxiety that I did, I was not able to like really speak up and advocate for me or my dog. And it just gave me a lot more anxiety, and it ended up not being the healthiest thing for me. So I ended up not taking her to school with me anymore. She acts more of like an ESA now. So she has been one of the biggest tools in terms of helping me overcome like my PTSD and stuff, and she's really helpful in terms of like anxiety and even like my endometriosis or whatever. She's definitely still very present in my life, and is still very present in terms of helping me emotionally and mentally, but She is not a service animal. You will not see her outdoors with me. How do you aid physical symptoms of anxiety if you experience them? I experience a lot of physical symptoms of anxiety. To be honest, I think that's the difference between anxiety and worry. People seem to confuse the two a lot, and I think worry is more of like, what if this happens, or I'm scared of this happening, whereas anxiety is very much, even though it's classified as a mental illness, it is almost purely physical. And this is kind of a loaded question. I feel like it's kind of individual to the situation that I'm in. I would say overall, aiding symptoms of physical anxiety for me is, first and foremost, I would say no touching. If you touch me when I'm anxious, that is like a sure way for me to experience sensory overload. And then once I hit sensory overload, there's almost like no coming back from that. It is very, very traumatizing and very scary to experience. Being by myself, where I can decompress. I'm an introvert, so I need time alone by myself anyways, but especially when I am anxious, I think time alone is key. And if I am with someone in those times and I can't necessarily be alone, I think the ability to sit in silence is incredible. And it's really, really important, because any added noise, or it's just kind of like a sensory overload thing, any added noise on top of feeling the way I feel is like, I'm just gonna feel really overwhelmed. So I think those are probably the top things, is no touching and like silence. But that is really just kind of like individual to the person. Some people love physical touch when they're anxious, and you know, I understand that. It's just, it's not me. So, how do you find meaning in life when life feels meaningless? This is a big question, and I feel like the answer I'm going to give now isn't going to be relevant to a lot of people. First off, I'm going to say that I struggle heavily with feeling like my life has no meaning. It is like something I battle with all the time, every day. But yeah, I'm a Christian, so it's still kind of a new thing in my life. I haven't been a Christian for long, but I've kind of gotten to the point recently where even though I feel like my life has no meaning and it wouldn't make a difference if I was here or not, I know what God says about me, and I know how God views me, and I know that my life does have meaning, and you know, He made me specifically, and He put me specifically on this earth at this time around the people that I'm around, you know, for a reason. Like that, I don't think that kind of stuff is just like, just happens, you know. It's all very, very intentional. So even though I still struggle with not knowing what the meaning of my life is, I know that it does have meaning, and I might not figure out what that meaning is in this lifetime, but like, it's there, it's somewhere. I would say before I was a Christian, I would kind of come up with reasons like why my life has meaning without knowing if those were like actually true. So I know one of the biggest things for me was knowing that I have experienced and I have gone through so much, and I have a very, very powerful story. I to this day believe that I was given the things that I was given, and I've went through the things that I have went through in order to share that with other people. I think a lot of the stuff that I have been through is a lot of the stuff that people tend to not talk about, and I found a lot of meaning in my life through just feeling like it's my duty, as lame as that sounds, to share my story and try to give hope and some insight into other people's life who might feel a little lost. Overall, I don't know if that's like the genuine meaning of my life, but that's before I was a Christian, kind of just like what I went by. And even when I really wanted to leave this earth and I wanted no part of living, I mean, that kind of kept me here, was just knowing that if I was gone, like, who would share my story? So, I don't know if that was helpful to anyone. When do you find that your social anxiety is the worst? I'm going to give two examples here, and it's going to seem like these are on two completely opposite sides of the spectrum, but it's genuinely when I feel the most anxious socially. And it's when I'm in crowds of people, and by crowds I mean within close proximity of any more than like 4 people. Yeah, I just feel like I'm always on the outside of every single situation socially, and I feel like I have to entertain people. It's such a stressful situation to me. That's why you will never see me really at any social event that is like not an intimate gathering of people, because it is just like really, really overwhelming to me, and it's like just kind of like one of those sure ways to like hit sensory overload, which I don't like doing. And then at the other end of that, one-on-one conversations with someone that I am not like 100% comfortable with. And by 100% comfortable, I mean if you aren't my family or my boyfriend and my boyfriend's family, that's probably you. It's just, I feel like I need to lead conversation, so I'm like constantly, like my brain is going like 100 miles an hour trying to figure out how to keep conversation going. And even though we're on a topic and we're talking like back and forth, now my brain is already working on like, okay, well once this segment ends, like what can I bring up to keep the conversation going? And then I also just feel the need to like entertain, and like I feel like people are gonna get bored of me or feel like I have no personality, so then I'm also like trying to act like I'm just not authentic. I think when I am on a one-on-one conversation, I feel like a lot of it is pretending and a lot of it is trying to hype myself up as much as possible to seem interesting or nice or just like someone you would probably want to have a conversation with. That's kind of all I have for this video. Thank you guys to whoever sent in any questions or any of your struggles, and like if you opened up to me in any sort of way, like thank you. I appreciate that so much because I know it is not easy whatsoever. The holidays are a hard time for a lot of people, so if you are like me and find yourself struggling a lot in this time, just know that you aren't alone and that you are loved and you are valued. If you liked this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you really liked this video, feel free to subscribe to my channel to see more content. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you later. Bye!